Hello and welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks, been quite busy. I am putting together the mini of the month, a Cities of Sigmar soldier. Not quite sure what to do with the base. That's partly what's delayed me. I do have somewhere around here a paint scheme that was given to me by a cruel and vindictive Games Workshop employee. I wasn't cruel and vindictive. I just said challenge me, and he gave me some really weird colours to do it in. Blue armour, green face, just strangeness. And I've had a hold of this for probably a week, but I haven't got around to building it yet. So I'm building it now because the actual painting competition is due soon, and I'd feel very guilty if for the second month running I didn't actually get my entry completed. The multi-patchwork Space Marine, if I put up against there, you'll see multi-patchwork. I got to a point and I couldn't be bothered anymore. I will go back to him. I do intend finishing him, but right now I just got burnt out with the idea, especially as it was under a time condition for a specific thing, and I could have pushed it and rushed it, but chose not to, and chose to fail the challenge instead. So this fella is for the next painting challenge, and I'm determined to enter, which means getting him done painted to completion, which means giving myself plenty of time, more than the week that I usually give myself of half an hour here, half an hour there. And given that I'm only just building it now, and like I say, I think I've had it for a week, it could be argued that I am already not setting myself up for success. I do like these models, the New Cities range. I'm not a massive fan of AOS. I've never quite understood what its identity is, which, is partly to be expected, given that launching a whole new game from scratch with no pre-existing kits is very costly, and especially a big tabletop game, and especially if you have the expectation of a big tabletop game, because you're the biggest company. So when AOS came along, obviously they used a lot of the old kits from the old world and just ported them across, partly so that people could use their old models, but also partly so that they could keep selling their old kits, which meant that when you were establishing the look and the feel of Age of Sigmar, all of the Free Guild and the Dispossessed and all that sort of stuff was supposedly in Age of Sigmar locations, but they were still looking like the old Landsnecht inspired Empire State troops. And so for me, there was a disconnect between what I was being told was new and shiny. While it's connected to the old world, it's millennia have passed. Actually, we probably don't know exactly how long, because there was some time where sediment was floating around in the void before they coalesced into the 9 realms, or the many realms, or the different winds of magic realms, or whatever it is they characterize them by. I'm not entirely sure. But while the Stormcast come along, and they're a new thing, and while the Lumineth and the Ideneth come along and change elves so that you still have elves, but you have different elves to what you had before, and the various dwarf factions, you still have Lizardmen, Skaven, things like that. They're called Chaos Range. The Orcs, none of that feels like it's particularly unique to AOS. None of the Orc stuff or the Chaos stuff looks like, and in fact the Ogre stuff that's coming up behind it, you have had the Ogre Lord, the Ogre Hunter, a couple of the Underworld warbands have been Ogre themed, and then more recently the Warcry Gorgers. None of that looks particularly different to Ogre Kingdoms of the Old World. And so AOS, unfortunately, has never really hooked me. But I do like now that there are little things here and there that are not Old World. So these new cities of Sigmar are not Old World. I mean, you probably could have seen the designs in a Tylier or something like that, but like, they are different enough to what came before. And Stormcast and Ideneth, what they've been doing with the Tree Revenants, so that you have a Wood Elf faction that's not got any elves in it. It is starting to feel visually distinct for sure. But I think for me, I still have those early days of AOS not feeling any different, and they coloured my opinion on the setting to a point where it's difficult for me to break out of those thoughts. They have been shaped and moulded in that way. Which I understand is obviously a me problem. It's because they are doing a lot of work now to differentiate them, and especially given the Old World's coming out, I'm very pleased that you have the main standard human faction out now that will look different to an Empire army. I just hope they keep pushing it that more, way more. So I noticed that the Steam Tank is still available for Cities of Sigmar, and I don't think it should be. I think if you want to give them something that's like a mechanized thing, then sure, give them something. But the Steam Tank should be in Nuln with the Nunnery gun line. Nunnery gun line? Gun line of Nuln. Because otherwise Steam Tanks will turn up again in the Old World, and that will confuse the boundaries again between the two systems. Because it does look like and understandably so, because it's all about selling kits that they already have and they haven't put the investment in. That's why we're not getting Kislev, I guess, because that's a huge amount of investment to make model kits and tool them up with new molds and everything. Whereas they already have the old Empire Militia frame, so why not sell some more of that? And they already have the old Grail Knights. In fact, they have 2 whole armies, the Bretonnians and the Tomb Kings, that are currently not doing anything, but they have all those old steel molds, so bring them back, sell them. It's going to be, what, 9 years next year when Old World comes back, since Old World vanished. So it kind of makes sense to me, but you could have, if it would be me, and I have no budget constraints because it's me and it's just me wish listing, you could have brought back the old 4th Ed steam tank for the Empire. It looks a little bit dinky. And then maybe an upgrade sprue for the current plastic steam tank to make him more Cities of Sigmar. So, okay, this is still a human faction and there are shared DNA in both of them, but they're still sort of visually distinct. And it kind of makes more sense, I guess, that in the Old World, especially 300 years before, that it's a much more rudimentary version, a much more temperamental version of the steam tank, whereas in the OS it's a lot more defined, big, chunky, scary beast on the tabletop. Anyway, it's just what I would have done. They are just sort of really good generic fantasy figures, though. That's the other thing I'll say about them. I've seen a lot of people talk about possibly using them in Mordheim. And I will admit there is a significant part of me that sees the opportunities for possibly building a Witch Hunter warband with them, so maybe I'll return to the kits in the future. Especially, I think, was it cities that had the Warcry release with all the doggies, which you can't be a witch hunter in the City of the Damned if you haven't brought all your doggies with you, and you know, they were some nice dog kits. Empty frame. I think I'm going to leave this shield off. I have never really been that bothered about sticking shields on and then painting. It's never bothered me. I've never done sub-assemblies in that manner. I am becoming more and more painterly rather than more gamey. That's possibly one thing. But also partly when I kind of stopped in my efforts to paint the Space Marine, I was doing his chest, which, as if anyone knows, on any Space Marine ever, that means that you have a great big gun placed in front of him, which makes it difficult to paint his chest and his eagle. So, shield will stay separate, painted separate, the inside, and then super glue it on, probably. Right, that's model 1. What to do next? I think, actually, do some fine cast. This is Gamesday and Golden Demon 2012, before Warhammer Fest came along and ruined the fun. This is the Blood Angels Captain based on the 2nd edition box set. Kind of old, my box. You can't really see it, I think, under this lighting, but it's very yellowed, sun bleached. I have had this since 2012, but I never did Space Marines, so I never did anything with him. Possibly he was fine cast, maybe that's what put me off. I always used to take anything I could get a hold of, Space Marine wise, and put some spikes on it and make it chaos. But as I explained in the last video, I have got to the stage in my hobby career where I am regretting hacking apart models at the time. Like I have a Siler Slaughterer that I said I was putting back together. I've also been looking at my old Inquisitor 54mm models. Same again, some of them are very, very butchered. In fact, I had an Artemis model that I was trying to take the bolt gun out of his hands, because I was going to at one point make a massive Demon Prince using him as a base. So rather than the fantasy style Demon Princes at the time, make a more Space Marine inspired one. I saw some people in White Dwarf, I think it was Christian Burns' Iron Warriors, use Witch Hunter Tyrus as a base, and I thought, why not use Artemis, because he's even bigger. I had some Dragon Wings that I was attaching. Again, I've reclaimed the Dragon Wings for the actual dragon. Although part of that dragon's missing, it's somewhat irritatingly. It's an old metal dragon based on the Talisman dragon. That everyone had the same dragon, just slightly, you know, the same dolly, then slightly modelled up differently. Ergen Van Horseman was on there, if I remember correctly. His dragon was given 2 heads. I've got the Wood Elf dragon, although the Wood Elf on top of him is gone a long time ago, and yeah, he's missing part of his tail, I believe, which is slightly irritating. But yeah, for some reason I never put this guy together, and so therefore he doesn't have spikes attached to him. And so I can just assemble them as standard. It's not the worst Finecast kit I've ever had, but I am noticing a couple of bubbles here and there that I will assemble him and then probably fix the bubbles and stuff off camera. As part of this assemble every and paint every Space Marine, I did say I wasn't quite sure how I was going to paint them all. This is another one where he is the Blood Angels Captain. He is the front cover brought to life of the 2nd edition box set. But I don't know whether to paint him up as standard as well, or whether to bring my own colour scheme to him. Because I've got standard Marines kicking about that I can experiment and play with. and do something slightly different. But then, like I said about the Imperial Fist, well, I say the Imperial Fist, he's a Space Wolf masquerading as an Imperial Fist. Fafnir Ran. It's Ran apparently, I got the name wrong, even though I had the box in front of me. But Fafnir Ran and Fafnir Rand, I think I prefer the idea of Fafnir Rand. I'm a comic book fan, so maybe it's Danny Rand that's running through my head perhaps, who, despite his awful Netflix show, remains one of my favourite characters in comics. Specifically Marvel superhero comics, I should point out. Before, anyone comes at me and says Judge Dredd is better, because I agree, Judge Dredd is better. But yeah, Fafnir Rand and Zephyr, was it? The Blood Angels guy that came out that year. There's a part of me that thinks perhaps I should paint them up in their standard colours, but maybe, I mean, they're standard legions, if not their standard colours. I could do something slightly different with the Blood Angels colour scheme, for sure. But then there's another part of me, which is a bigger part of me, that just fancies going at it however I want. I could just paint this guy gold, like some of the old Blood Angels characters, Tycho. I've always said Taicho, but I think it might be Tycho. Their armor was gold, right? And Dante's gold. And I think now you have the Sanguinary Guard, which are an entirely gold suited assault marine unit. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, that's a horrible piece of flash. Okay. A lot of people are complaining about Epic Legionis Smolionis at the minute, with undercuts from their barrels to their bodies, meaning that there's a big piece of flash or fill plastic. This guy has that, except he's not 6mm, he's 28mm. But I know a little bit about the manufacturing process, so I understand why it's there. Although I did almost just miss it, which is slightly irritating. Disappointed with myself. Not the model, myself. It was me that missed it, almost. A lot of the time, I fancy painting a colour, a random colour. So, it could be a turquoise or a teal or a jade green, which was a lovely colour back in the day, if I remember correctly. Hexagon Pots, jade green I think was its name. I fondly remember painting some models, maybe some lizard men, maybe some inquisitors, straight from the pot, not thinning my paints. Yeah, naughty me. I remember it being a nice colour. I just don't quite remember what it was called. Jade green, I feel like. That's probably what it was, jade green. So I have a colour in mind. I've got some models tucked away where I decided I wanted to paint some yellow. Because for the longest time, and actually the Inquisitors are mostly in this colour, purple was my favourite go-to And then people of a certain vintage, White Dwarf fans, will remember Tank's Speed Freaks in White Dwarf. And I misremembered this. I remembered it being a vivid orange and purple, whereas it was a lot more subtle when I went back and looked at the actual article. But anyway, the combination of purple and orange and reading the reason for it. Greengrocers wrap their oranges in purple paper to make them look brighter, and so therefore more appealing, because purple and orange clash on the colour wheel. And so for the longest time, whenever I picked up a model, I had to get purple and orange on there, which is why I have a Goblin Force under construction, which is currently for the 4th edition, which I have previously mentioned me and my friend are doing. And their robes are purple and their little faces are orange. But that became my one and only paint colour choice, whatever I painted. Orcs and Goblins, Inquisitor models, Trollbloods for War Machine and Hordes. Painted up some Void models, I think, as well, in purple and orange, which I think I've explained before in previous videos. Void was out in the 90s. I can see similar themes in terms of space empires. I think the Syntha are a mechanized robotic killing race, although the Necrons obviously take it. I thought that I've had just now, in terms of aesthetic styling, Void is Warhammer 40,000 without the influence of John Blanche and his grimdark aesthetic, his championing of the grimdark aesthetic. I think Void is more cyberpunk, although it's 90s, so it didn't go as far as Infinity. Spacefaring cyberpunk, that's where I'm going with that. That's what I think, that's how I describe them. But yeah, I think I painted some Void models, also purple and orange. I recently watched I recently watched either the most recent or the second most recent interview that the Painting Phase did with the guy Tom from Hobby Products, and he was explaining the mold line remover and the brush that was released for Finecast coming out. And right at this minute, with all the little tiny furry bits on this bolter, I can understand why they felt it was necessary. Let's glue him to his base. I haven't even checked if it fits his base. That would be a good start, wouldn't it? He does not fit his base. Oh dear, oh dear. Right, well, why doesn't he fit his base? Where's it sticking? Is it the base itself? Hopefully, it won't take an hour to do this guy. But I can't help but notice we are about to hit the half-hour mark, and I can't even get him to go. It's a slaughter base. He doesn't want to. Is he too wide? What? Why isn't he going in? something that is not immediately visually obvious, unless it's the writing perhaps, is he's going part way and then not going any further. Oh, maybe it's that. I'm going to trim this bit off. It could be this. It's tab. Could be a little, it was angled, so it could be a little bit too long for the base perhaps. Oh, no, still too far, but getting closer. On he goes. Good. Kind of. Okay. Yep, that works. I understand the argument that this is a much easier material to work with than metal for new hobbyists. In the 2 interviews that Painting Phase have done with the hobby products fella, he did explain the hobby trumpet and what end you are, the beginner or the experienced. And for the beginner, Finecast is a much easier model, miniature to work with, miniature material. But your knife does just carve in, sometimes a little bit too easily. I remember it being sold to us in store. We're talking about all the different ways in which you can sell it as a GW store when it first came out. And they went on the detail and all those sort of things. And I think some details, like I said, on this are quite crisp. Although there will be some tiny work that needs doing to fix them up. Which means I'll have to go tracking down. They might be small enough to have a go with liquid green stuff, although I've never found liquid green stuff to do what they claimed it did, which liquid green stuff was another product supposedly designed to fix the micro bubbles on Finecast. Liquid green stuff evaporates off, and so the gap that I have never seems to get totally filled. But I remember it actually being sold to us in store in terms of it, you know, being slightly flexible. Yeah, there's some twist in Finecast models. They bend back with no apparent breakage. And the fact that stuff would bounce and not snap, whereas metal models would bounce into pieces, which is a bit frustrating if, like for example, you had been recently putting together a 54mm scale Space Marine who may or may not be called Artemis, and you're being very careful to yeah, you've been very careful to pin all of his joints, his body, back and forth. Ooh, the top of this is a bit bubbly. I'm currently scraping his backpack, and I was breathing because I didn't want to make a mistake. A bit like when you paint and put my knife through the top of it. Yeah. Yeah, and then let's say, for example, you were very nearly done to having a complete Artemis once again, and then you drop him and you crack the welds on the glue. That would be terrible. Whereas with Finecast, supposedly the model would just bounce instead of cracking and breaking off, which, you know, has a level of truth to it, but it's a horrible thing to work with. Oh, you're joking. His shoulder pad is in the way of the vent on his backpack, his power pack. That is nuts. The only way to get it to fit flush is to have it on an angle. Well, we just take a little bit of material off, and then when we come to paint it, don't acknowledge those edges and just paint it as if it was a hole, perhaps. That is tiresome. Bit of glue. Why would they do that? Oh no. Oh, I don't appear to have even been scraping up in the right place. Oh dear. Get my finger stuck now because I've got some glue on it already. Go on you go. Stay there. No. No. There we go. Stay there. Okay. Now we have to wait and see if it sticks. They did say on that podcast that Finecast was a stopgap as they moved on their way to fully plastic. And given that I have a Cities of Sigmar soldier in front of me in my eye line now that I put together, and I have a Space Marine captain out of resin in my fingers, I can understand why they would have viewed it as a stopgap. Because even the Forge World resin models that I've put together, I don't find as frustrating as Finecast. I'm trying very hard not to call it Failcast, which is obviously what the colloquial term amongst the hobby community for it was, because everyone hated it. Yeah, I'm not. This is a very mild experience. There aren't many parts to this model, but some of them are fine. Quite finicky, fiddly. I can understand why people would have got very frustrated if they had some complex models to put together. I'm also putting together a metal steam tank at the minute. Again, something that I hacked up. I had, at one point in my life, the crazy idea to do a Carnival of Chaos warband with a plague cart pulled by a steam tank being driven by either a plague bearer or some Nurglings or something like that. Oh, his face. And so I hacked up this steam tank to make it more chaosy. I no longer have the plague cart. I don't know where that went, but I do have most of the remnants of the steam tank. He might have to have a plastic gun, and one of his wheels is missing, but he's mostly there. I will get back to him at some point. I think he was supposed to be a challenge for this year to get him completed. But given that I currently don't know where he is, I suspect I'm not going to get that challenge done. Awkward. But putting that together, even that big heavy model, isn't currently proving as frustrating as this here Blood Angel Finecast Marine boy. I'm gonna have to go hunting that down because I genuinely don't know where it is. Where does that go? Does that go that way? Fortunately, I kept a picture so I can check where that goes. Oh, apparently it goes straight down. Weird. I don't like that. There's some movement in this model, and this goes straight down. Nah, that's just silly, surely. We're gonna line it with the leg so that it's swinging in the same direction, I reckon. It's his little ceremonial dagger. On you go. And then we hold it. Because it doesn't want to glue. Stay in place. Stay in place. Doesn't want to glue. Maybe I should have pinned this. My worry is, though, a drill would have destroyed the Finecast resin. But it wouldn't have liked the experience of being drilled. Go on. Stop where you are. Yeah. It doesn't want to glue. It's very unhappy with life. Oh my god. Come on. Ordinarily, I wouldn't argue that the solution to a problem is more glue. But this reminds me of hobby projects from much earlier in my life, when I was 14 and I was frustrated that things weren't working out properly. That's when you just threw more glue at it, when you were younger and frustrated with life. And his little ceremonial scabbard is one of these moments. Haha! Stuck. Okay. I think we'll work on his base a little bit and then call it done I have in recent times for these Space Marines chosen to make a sprue rubble base, which is just a case of clipping off chunks and attaching them rather variedly, and then painting them green is how I did it on him. So I didn't really write down the paint recipe, but I will endeavour to do something similar for these other models, which they're still on my shelf. I haven't got around to spraying them yet, undercoating them. Partly time, and partly because actually there's no need to spray them yet. I have a handful of models, including those batch paint, which I hate the idea of batch painting. That's why I haven't got very far with it. So painting a bunch of Space Marines isn't a necessity right now. Or spraying a bunch of Space Marines, I should say, because that would just add to the backlog in a unconstructive manner. Okay. Yeah, he's staying on. Good. That's the other thing with all models, and I love metal, but I will also say that this is a frustration. Is sometimes you've glued a piece in place. Ow! Just tried cutting my finger open. You glued a piece in place, and you put it on the side, and 5 minutes later it drops off. Yes, I know you don't get that with plastic and plastic glue, but anyway, I have it's not just nostalgia. I do not, I think there's something about metal. I think the metal models I've the metal models I've painted tend to pop a lot more. So there's a warmness to them. Oh, my finger feels weird now. I didn't actually cut my finger, but I did clamp the jaws of my clippers around it because I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to this. It's also the reason why sometimes it takes me an hour to put a model together. Although, this session has been somewhat speedy because I got 2 models done in 45 minutes. I'm just a little bit longer now because I'm gonna glue his base, which I don't think I've done while talking. I think I did it off camera as part of the prep. Although I did say that, yeah, there's a few little gaps and stuff that need filling, some holes in the bubbled resin, like aero. For those that don't know, aero chocolate is bubbles. It's very tasty, but it's all full of bubbles. A bit like rack concrete, we've had a big scandal for recently. Anyway, let's get some bits of sprue rubble on his base, and then he can be done. And I won't be silly, and I won't put the clippers through my fingers again, or need to put the clippers through my fingers again for cutting more bits of sprue. Just getting random shapes and attempting to build them a little bit like Tetris. If you could see these, you probably wouldn't want me to come and build a wall for you. Oh, I do. Oh dear. I might need to clip some more bits maybe, as I'm running out fast, and I don't think I've got a few little bits here I could perhaps do something with. We'll see how it goes. I'm using the needle of my plastic glue because my plastic glue always dries up the needle, and I know that there's the technique for burning it open again, but I use the needle to keep the main channel of the glue clear, and then just pull the needle out and pour directly from the bottle. Dab it. But I'm just using that needle now just to work these bits of sprue into place. Just working our way around the feet of this model. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. He's in place. And just, yeah, using them as push. I do have an actual needle somewhere on my desk. I've used it for liquid green stuff, pushing that into place. But I don't know where that is right now. I had a big tidy up recently to make some space. I am supposed to be working after all. I am at uni. Should be getting some work done. So I need to make some space for it, and so things have moved around a little bit, including, it would seem, that needle. Okay. Last 3 bits. I might need to scrounge up some more bits. That's a large bit, so we'll shove that in the middle somewhere. Oh, I'm getting a lot of stuff on my fingers now. It's leaking because it's a slotter base, and the slotter has had a lot of scraping down on it. It's leaking through the gap. It's also plastic glue, and so therefore it's melting the actual base. I keep dropping bits, and so melting the actual base, and so my fingers are getting a bit black from the rims of this. We'll use this bit. We'll use this bit. Drop a little bit on top. And we'll use this bit. And then when we're done, I guess we're scrubbing around the floor to try and find those little bits that we dropped. I say we, me, that I dropped. Okay, he is done. And we are still sub the 1 hour mark. So there he is. That's the model. Get him sprayed up at some point. And he's part of the Paint Every Space Marine I Know personal challenge. I know. I don't know many Space Marines. Paint every Space Marine I own. Personal challenge. 2012, 11 years before he got built. Not the worst in terms of my own personal hobby. But not great either, I guess, for some people. Anyway, I'll call it there. Thank you for joining along. I have 2 more models assembled from my massive backlog, which actually, in this room, it's getting down to the point where I just have a bunch of forge ruled resin kits to put together, which are slightly more awkward, and obviously with the resin dust, and I probably will want to pin them, so I probably won't do those on camera. But I do have the remaining bunch of Space Marines, so I'll do those, and then we'll work out what we're doing next. So, thank you for watching, listening, wincing as I tried to cut my finger off, and I'll see you again soon.